What time is it?
Time for card games. In July of 2012, in the 4th season of Adventure Time, an episode aired called Card Wars. Over a year later, we would see that episode turn into its own physical copy of a card game of the same name. Now, if you've watched Adventure Time and you've watched the Card Wars episode, you'd know that Card Wars is...
the fantasy card game that's super complicated and awesome?
Not really, but it is a really fun game. And the fact that we got to see a card game in a cartoon become real is crazy. If you think about it, there's a lot of stuff that comes out in cartoons that are like in-universe brands that never become real. But we've got one here, finally. The way they play Card Wars in the Adventure Time show is a little bit different from how they play Card Wars regularly, and sometimes the rules of Card Wars can get a little muddied because you kind of overthink it, especially if you're used to other card game. Luckily for us, Card Wars is the first card game to have its very own official strategy guide that was written. Unfortunately for me, these battle guides are incredibly rare now, and they can run you hundreds of dollars. They usually come with a little battle mat, but this one did not. The first Card Wars product that was released was actually the Finn and Jake Double Deck, which was released as a collector's pack. It seemed to just be a collector's item for people that thought the Card Wars episode was cool and wanted a physical copy. And then they just kept making decks. Eventually, when the Daddy-Daughter Card Wars episode released in Season 8, I believe, they made a tournament pack with the decks from that episode, and then they subsequently made a booster set, only one, before the card game was discontinued after Adventure Time's late death. Cancellation? What happens to shows? Anyway, all that information being said, let's get into the gameplay basics. The Card Wars setup is pretty simple. You get 4 landscape cards, oversized landscape cards, that you put down in any formation you want. And to understand which landscapes you need to play, you first need to understand how decks work. There are a couple parts of Card Wars cards that we need to pay attention to. First, up in the upper right-hand corner, you will see the landscape icon. This coincides with which landscape you need to have in order to play that card. There are 6 different landscape types you can have in Card Wars. There's the nice lands, the icy lands, the sandy lands, the blue plains, the cornfields, and the useless swamps. Some cards might have a little rainbow symbol up at the top corner, and that just means you can have any type of land to play this card. Now up in the upper left-hand corner of the card, it'll be a number. This is the amount of action points that it costs to play this card, but this is also the amount of landscapes of the landscape type that you need to play this card. For example, say you're playing Immortal Maze Walker. You're going to need 2 useless swamp landscapes in order to play that card. If you have any less, you won't be able to play that card anymore. Every card has a text box. Sometimes it just has some flavor text. Sometimes it'll have an ability that you can consistently trigger by doing some action. Sometimes those actions are floop actions, and flooping is like tapping in Magic the Gathering, where you just turn the cards sideways. For creature cards, you'll find down in the bottom left-hand corner an attack value, and in the bottom right-hand corner a defense value. In Card Wars, when you attack, if your opponent has a creature in the same lane as your attacking creature, your attack value will meet their defense value, and much like Magic the Gathering, any excess damage does not go through to your opponent. So to start your game, you draw 5 cards into your hand. 5. There we go. Then, at the beginning of your turn, you get 2 action points, which we're going to symbolize with these 2 little counters that come with every single collector's pack of Card Wars. The cool thing about action points is that if you don't use them, or if you don't use one of them in the turn, they will stay there until your next turn. So if you have 1 or 2 left over, you could have 3 or 4 action points your next turn to play bigger cards. So at the beginning of the turn, you're going to look at your hand and you're going to decide which card you want to play. For me, I'm going to spend 2 action points to bring in my Archer Dan card. Now, there are a couple different things I can do on my turn. If I wanted to, I could floop my Archer Dan, which is like tapping in Magic. He's going to turn sideways, and whatever his floop effect is going to go into effect. When you floop a card, it's customary to bring it down to the bottom of your landscape so you don't confuse flooping with attacking. When you attack with a card, it'll go up to the top of your landscape. When you play Card Wars, your opponent's landscapes are going to be up against yours like this. So when you attack, your attack is going through the same lane on their side as your creature is on. So if they have no creature, your damage will go straight through to them. But say our opponent has the pig on the field, and we were to attack, the 2 damage would go towards the pigs for defense. Other things you can do in your turn before you attack: if you have a leftover action point, you can spend that action point to draw a card. Now let's say you'd like to play a building card like the Hay Barn. What you're going to do is you're going to spend your 1 action point and place the Hay Barn down under the landscape. Normally, the building will only affect the lane that it's a part of. Sometimes they'll affect the entire field or the lanes next to you. After that, you end your turn. At the beginning of your next turn, all you do is you ready all of your cards.
That's basically the basics.
Card Wars is a super simple card game, and like I said before, it is subject to a lot of overcomplication in players' heads. A lot of people tend to overcomplicate things because they're used to games like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! They're used to things being a little bit more complicated than Card Wars has going on. But Card Wars is just a simple card game. It really feels like a game that was made by someone that has a passion for card games, but also wanted this game to be kid-friendly and new player-friendly. Now, since Card Wars' discontinuation, it's been kind of expensive. It's been very slowly creeping up. Not too much, not too crazy expensive, but still kind of expensive. If you don't have the money to buy Card Wars, or if you don't want to spend the money to buy into Card Wars, unfortunately there's no longer a way to play Card Wars for free. There used to be a couple of different apps that you could actually play Card Wars on, and it played kind of similarly to how they play in the show, but with the cancellation of Adventure Time and subsequently Cartoon Network's disposal of it, most of the Adventure Time apps just kind of went away. It's very unfortunate, but Card Wars is very fun, so if you have the money or if you're interested in playing, I would recommend it. You can buy decks for generally around $30 to $60, and you can buy the entire booster box for about the same price as you would a Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster box, like $60, $50. And now to hand down my judgment on Card Wars, I would honestly give it about I would say a 7.5 out of 10. It's not the world's most perfect card game, but it's perfectly fun to play. You know, I don't want to give it too low of a score, but I also don't want to give it too high of a score. And that is Card Wars. Thank you so much for watching if you did, and I'm so glad that you're here. It seems like people enjoy these types of videos, so I'd like to keep making them. I have a bunch of specifically Yu-Gi-Oh! Content planned in the future, and a bunch of other things planned. 2022 is going swimmingly for me personally so far, and I'm gonna try and get a video released every single week this year. So once again, thank you for watching, and drink your water.